Imagine yourself under a starry sky, around the warm glow of a sacred fire, where speakers gather to share their wisdom and insights. Creating a sacred space where all are welcome to warm their hands. Here are your hosts, Sarenth Odinson, Snow, Cabra, and Emily Streaking Fate. Discuss spirituality, mythology, animism, and culture around a virtual sacred fire. Won't you join us around Grandfather Fire? Hail to the gods who shelter. Hail to those who keep us warm when it is cold and keep us cool when it is hot. Hail to those that keep us fed and keep us dry. Those who keep us warm and safe and secure and healthy. Hail to the women, the feminine and the female. Hail to the gods, spirits, and ancestors who appear as such or have existed as such. And those of other genders, no gender, multiple genders, and varying gender. Hail and praise upon you for all that you have done, all that you do, and all you may do.
Welcome to Around Grandfather Fire. This is episode 149 with my good friends and co-hosts Snow and Emily Streaking Fate. How are you both doing today?
I am good. I am figuring out my setup in my new place, so I apologize if it sounds weird, and I'm relieved if it does not. Uh, there's been lots of running around. I don't even think I've had coffee today.
Damn.
There's been a lot of running around. I've had very nice chats with multiple taxi drivers, though, so, one taxi driver was impressed that I worked out his car dashboard was in Romanian. One taxi driver was talking about how the mild weather helps with his fasting for Ramadan, because it seems to be horrific when Ramadan coincides with heat waves.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
who wants to fast for like a 17-hour day? Yeah. Whereas when
Yeah.
it's pretty mild, you go out working in that, it's not as bad. So yeah, that's me.
I'm glad you're getting settled and things are moving afoot. That's
Mm.
like half the fight right there.
I'll. How are you, Emily?
I am doing decently well. We've made it for walks in the forest the last 3 days, I think. Today was very sunny, so I'm looking forward to getting back into regular walks in the forest a lot more. Um, so that is lovely, just more time outside. I did not make coffee today, yet. And so I sat down and I was like, the ancestors do not have coffee, so they will be getting coffee later. So it may be a later night tonight for us. Um, to be fair, I did like clean out coffee grounds and such, and I was starting to get it ready, but I did not get to the make new coffee for ancestors yet. So that will be a thing to do later. It's been a good couple weeks so far. Um, Getting back into the swing of things. I might be doing more with ancestor work stuff in the future. In the next couple months, I'm looking at some stuff, some opportunities. Otherwise, it is pretty much the same old, same old. Saranth, how about y'all?
Oh, let's see. I'm actually back to work now because I just got off my vacation, and there's a part of me that's like,
By your
okay,
standards, is a vocational weekend.
well, okay. I took 2 weeks off because the first week was for convocation, and then the second week was ostensibly to recover. And
So 2 weeks off of your day job so that you could have a full weekend of working spirit work as well as a few spirit work sessions for other clients. So a vacation from your day job, yes.
was that a little hard? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that you're not wrong, but um, I kept less busy. I actually relaxed. Go me. um, it was complicated because there would have probably been more relaxing, or at least more doing of other things, had our daughter not had to be home for a majority of that time for the second week because of school issues. And so it was a little bit of a back and forth and a challenge, but I mean, we worked it out, and the equilibrium we're at now is like, okay, I'm getting back into the swing of working, of actually like working the day job slash night job. Uh, and so one of the things that I've been doing is I've been cranking out my monthly Patreon topic and prayer work. So that's been really fun. I have an article that drops next Wednesday about casting cloths and my frustration at how very little there is in the lore to go off of. But I mean, that's like practically anything esoteric that you want. I mean, you want to talk about masking? There's a couple of felt masks we found in Hedeby, and there's very little else other than like bractates in uh I'm gonna butcher this. I think it's Torsland. Um, so like doing research for this particular topic was irritating because there's not a whole lot to find. Because even if we could, like I said, I actually mentioned this in the article, like even if we could solidly identify that this could have been a casting cloth, it's biodegradable. Like even if they exactly use it the way we do today, there's no physical evidence because the shit degrades.
That's like when archaeologists go, these people must have had a very heavy meat-based diet. And it's like, well, it's only because you found the bones of the animals they eat. The salad will have all been gone by now.
Right. Which is why having poop is so important because you can actually analyze what the fuck they ate. And they're
And
like,
in
oh, wow.
archaeology as well, not just science recreational time.
oh, oh, God. I didn't expect you to try to fucking kill me. Okay, so moving swift, moving swiftly on.
Mhm.
Would you? I'm gonna take
Just
a minute to breathe.
let it pass.
I mean, poop sculptures could be a good biodegradable offering for some spirits, potentially.
It could be good or it could be crap. Sarinth has had to mute himself and take his glasses off. For those of you listening, it's nothing like a good shit conversation.
The high bar that we set at AGF.
Yeah, sacred fire conversations indeed. Oh gods. So, Snow, would you like to introduce our guest?
Is that going to be the segue into bringing our guest in? Fecal
You make a
matter.
better one, my friend.
Who else is crap?
I mean, I was going to say, well, the lack of extant written things and text and such was another reason that I wound up looking so much into 15th, 16th, 14th century kind of things. and I've been monologuing about, the Picatrix and Agrippa and stuff on my channel on the AGF server. And someone else who does a lot of writing and research is our guest today.
Hello.
So, last seen on AGF's episode 127, Sif is a Norse heathen from and based in England. She's the co-author of the Wyrd Less Woven, an alternative heathen prayerbook, and the author of Valkurjur, Servant or Master. She's been going her own podcast, The Heathen Hangout, available on her YouTube channel, and authored the paper She Who Becomes Death, discussing the Norn Skuld as a death deity. Writer, artist, and speaker, Sif Brookes, welcome back to Around Grandfather Fire.
Thank you for having me. It's already off to a great start.
We try.
Yeah. Speaking of poop,
We do try to make all of our guests feel so welcome here.
When you're from the part of England we're both from.
oh yeah, Midlands.
Mm.
Hey.
So,
Oh,
when
dear.
you were last on the show, you were teasing writing your book on the Valkyries, and
Mhm.
now Valkyria, Master or Servant, is out.
It is. It is indeed. Bit surreal. I feel like I can't remember when I was on last year. Was it around about the same time? I don't know.
May have been. I
Yeah,
looked up; it was episode 127. I didn't look up when that happened.
I feel like it was around about the same time. But
Mm.
yeah, so the last few months, well, basically, when the last time I was on, I was finishing it.
Mhm.
And those few months went quick. And the book was expected to be published this year, but it got lucky and found an earlier release date. But yeah, it's been well received, and that makes me very happy. A lot of people who know nothing about the Valkyries and are just very interested in finding some information out about them. People are saying that it's very helpful. So, very, very glad. And I'm working on the next couple of books now, kind of continuing on in the same vein about the other in Norse myth, which covers so many different aspects. I've been particularly doing deep dives in terms of medieval Maleficarum, and kind
Ooh.
of linking back into Scandinavian roots and how Scandinavia differs massively from the rest of Europe in so many ways. It's really quite outstanding in terms of the outlying ways that Scandinavia differs from the rest of Europe, in terms of things also like the talk I did recently at Jorvik, feminine death deities, which I've seen previously. Scandinavia is called the home of feminine death because of how different it is from the rest of Europe, which was it follows the kind of the rest of the Germanic world at the very least is predominantly masculine in terms of its presentation of death, and that's just not the case in Scandinavia. So that's been a rabbit hole or two, and it ties into the Valkyries, and I'm seeing a lot of patterns emerge and all of that. In terms of the witchcraft elements, it's in the medieval witch hunts, the kind of early modern witch hunts, were predominantly men being targeted in Scandinavia. So I'm thinking it's probably linked to the persevering kind of stigma potentially around that area and masculine practitioners of witchcraft. Um, yes, it's got a
Kind of like Shadows of Ergi.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, very. I've I've just been doing a load of deep dives into this sort of area because it is. I bought a book recently. I think it's behind me somewhere. I think it's Brian Pavlak, someone like that, who wrote a big book about witchcraft. Um, and he's very thorough in like detailing the various witch hunts that happen throughout like countries and times. But Scandinavia is almost like a footnote. And he just says, "Oh, it's mostly there we go, perfect." And he's mostly masculine practitioners, which is I'm just like, there's so much here, but it is just a footnote in this book. So there seems to be a lot of lack of scholarly thought that I could see in the terms of that area. But yeah, I'll stop talking now because this is just
No, please don't. This is great because I my
So,
little nerdy heart is like, yes, more.
So I mean, you touched on loads there that we can kind of
Yes.
dig into and dissect and such. So okay, let's start with the Valkyrie.
Hmm.
So I want to make you repeat yourself from last time too much. Listeners can go back and listen to episode 127, but in kind of like a quick, as concise as possible, bullet pointed version. If someone had no idea at all, hasn't yet gotten around to listening to the previous episode with you,
Hmm.
what's a Valkyrie?
Oh, okay. It's a chooser of the slain. It is, if you're going by the last 200 years of like academic thought, they are the servants of Odin. They in actuality, they choose who die and choose who live on the battlefield. But the image that is commonly conjured is that they pluck, the dead and take them to Valhalla. That is the kind of the Cliff Notes version, but in reality, and the focus of the book was really to dig deep in terms of common misconceptions like that, the way that they're often minimized in the literature and in modern day practice, and to kind of reevaluate their role in terms of their connections with fate and the importance of the battlefield. I propose a theory that I see the battlefield as a liminal ritual space. And I'm tying into aspects of like the blood being something that was pretty ritualistic and of religious importance. I also built on Helen D'Amico's work on the Discia and connecting them to ancestral priestesses, and the fact that the Valkyries are often called Discia. Obviously, there's an element of semantic weakening there in terms of the Dis and Discia being seen as essentially equal to goddess or term of similar nature. But I say that sometimes there might be a bit more of an in-depth relationship there with the Valkyries being called Discia, the Discias of the Jewels of Blood, and potentially as battlefield priestesses selecting sacrifices, and that sort of ritual element pervading in the kind of like contemporary thought. It's also tying into the fact that I believe the Valkyries are Seidr workers, and I think it's no coincidence that they're so closely tied to the most proficient practitioners of Seidr, of course, because they also have a connection to Freya, who is she kind of has echoes of the Valkyrie kind of archetype in terms of, wheresoever she rides into the strife, and that all those connections with like the Vanadis, Blótgithia, and all of that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that people just aren't talking about. And I feel like it's important to help people see the Valkyries in a different light to what is commonly presented, even in the modern day. The Victorian era, as I discussed, Wagner was massively awful. And I'm hoping I hope he's got a tally somewhere of how many times I'm just like you are, I will be your nemesis. Rematch. I don't know, but yeah, it's disheartening to see kind of how the Valkyries are often reduced to servants. So that's really where the title of the book came from, servant or master. And spoiler alert, I very much lean in on the latter half of that. It's and the book basically ends like this is just kind of like, how do you feel? Have I presented an argument here that you agree with, or is this like, or do you want to have like a discussion? I just want people to talk more about the Valkyries, regardless of what side of the fence you're on and what your opinion is, because I think I quoted Luke John Murphy in 2014. He said that not many people are talking about the Valkyries, and the case is still the same today. If you type in kind of Valkyrie or whatever in terms of like Google Scholar, I mean, it's sort of the same stuff. Vague mentions here and there. We're seeing a little bit of an uptick recently, but not really in terms of like figures that in the Nordic world. So yeah, it's definitely something that I want to keep working on. I feel like that book was the first of potentially many of just digging into that.
So I'm curious, as someone who's very much seen as a Valkyrie expert, and you give talks and presentations and have now written a book on the Valkyrie, in writing this book, were there many things that you found surprising?
Yes, but I guess some of it wasn't. It's like twofold. Some of it wasn't related to the Valkyries, and it was in other aspects. Because the first part of the well, first few chapters, I'm talking about shield maidens as well, and the whole absolute mess that is the idea of gendering graves based on grave goods. It's absolute words cannot describe the absolute chaos that is. It's just assuming, and I there's a few times in the book that I'm challenging one of like noted experts in the field like Judith Jesh. I'm just like, I think you're wrong. I honestly think you're wrong. I'm a big fan of Marion Moen, who is kind of leading the way in terms of reevaluating the kind of state of gendering graves, and is really kind of like pushing for, well, for the last so many hundreds of years, we've been doing this wrong. Let's actually just wipe the board clean and see where we are. Because what work's been done is just not a solid foundation for any sort of analysis. And I think the one thing that really struck me, because of how prevalent it is in the kind of modern conception, is this of keys being present in graves. And obviously, you speak to the average heathen, they'll tell you that most keys are found in feminine supposed graves. And there's modern papers that still show that, or say that they show that. But there's a paper from like, I don't know, like 20 years ago that's just like did a really thorough analysis. I'm trying to remember who it was. It's true. It's called, the paper was called like Truth or something like that. And it was about basically saying like, no, this is wrong. Keys are just everywhere. Basically, there's no like set gendered grave that these belong to, and yet we still have papers in the modern day that say, oh no, they're definitely this. Ultimately, this came from Victorian archaeologists, and you see that a lot, and it's still like that pervading threads of thought that keep going despite the evidence showing completely the opposite. And there's a lot of that in the book where I thought like, oh, why is this still happening? Why are we still having these conversations when it's the evidence is there? A
So
lot
if you
of it
don't
was,
mind, really quick,
oh no, yeah, go.
one of the things that, as you're talking, I'm reminded of one of the books I picked up this last year was the Norse Sorceress, Mind and Materiality in the Viking World, and a lot of what you're talking about, there's either reference to or direct input from different authors who had done some of these studies, where they were like the key thing, like really made me think of this because like I think it was 60 or 70% of the graves were classed as male graves. So even on a baseline, the way that you're sexing these graves is fucking wrong. And Bear is looking at again. It was several chapters in the book where like, look, you need to like dispense with pretty much anybody that's from previous uh, generations. Like they were looking at these quote cooking spits, and they were just iron bars with like little cage devices on them. And you've probably read Price's The Viking Way,
Hmm.
and the Norse Sorceress talks about this too because Price is in there as well. Um, where no, these are probably not cooking spits. These would have been too unwieldy for that. These are likely yarn stoffer.
Hmm.
And what it means when these are found in male sexed graves, it flips the gender binary and gender roles on their head and kind of brings into question everything we think we know. And we need to do a hard reevaluation of the sources in front of us.
Oh yeah.
And I love that we're in this period of academics going at this hammer and tongs because I mean when I was coming up in the early 2000s there were parts of the lore that was out there that didn't feel quite right for how the academic consensus talked about it, and I was like, no, this doesn't feel correct. Like keys aren't just frigs. They aren't, I mean, anybody that owns a home probably has some set of keys to open the front door. What, like, right? I mean, just like your basic symbol of home ownership. Why would this just be a purely feminine thing? That doesn't. There's nothing in the lore that points to that, and there's nothing that makes it doesn't make practical sense Like these people still have to live everyday lives, right?
Yeah, the guys just couldn't enter their own home. Help.
Can't.
You made your choice, sleep on the boat.
But I mean,
Silly.
especially when there's another book that I ran into that I read. It's a big academic work, and of course, I can't remember the damn name of it. It's got to do with women in the Viking Age, and it's a really big, thick tome. I think it's either from Oxford or from another.
Chances are good it's called Women in the Viking Age.
Oh, really? Thank you.
I don't know. I'm just saying, given the way these books are typically titled, if it's about women in the Viking Age, chances are good that it's probably just called Women in the Viking Age.
I thought it was something that was supposed to be like the Norse sorceress in terms of
I
like
mean, it could be.
blah 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 colon blah blah blah, but I can't recall what it is. But it was this big academic work that I poured through weeks and weeks over. So of course I can't remember the fucking title.
It's not women and gender in medieval Europe, is it?
Maybe I thought it was released this year or last.
I think it's the Norse sorceress mind and materiality in the Viking world.
No, it's another one. It was this one and another one that got published this year or last year. I can't remember.
And this is the segment of the show we like to call Guess What Sarent's Trying to Remember.
Thanks.
We really should have door prizes for this.
It's okay. It'll probably come to me like towards the end of the show anyway. But a lot of what you're talking about is really something I'm gratified to see that academia is finally grappling with. And it's not just the entrenched attitudes that we have from like very long dead excavators and the first generation of anthropologists, archaeologists, and all that, but something that's having a knock-on effect in heathen discourse too about the role of or lack of role of gender in how we practice our religion and our magic.
Mm-hmm.
And books like yours where it collates these things and brings together all these resources, I am deeply, deeply excited.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you not only adding to the discourse around gender and identity and magic and the role of all these supernatural beings, but also asking the question, okay, now how do you relate to it? Because I think for us heathens, that's where the metal meets the meat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was sort of one of my goals of the book as well, was to present it as a sort of, I think the words I use are academic light. So I wanted it to be accessible, but I also wanted it to be clearly from a heathen's perspective. So that was really what I was wanted to reaffirm all the way throughout. Like, I even say, like, if you stumbled upon this as a student of history, I hope you find something useful here. But like, predominantly, this is for heathens, and like throughout the book, I'm kind of doing kind of like devotional prayers to the Valkyries. They're just like poems I just kind of was inspired to write on the back of each chapter. But yeah, it was important for me to kind of frame it from a place where if you are more reconstructive, then you have something to hold on to, and you have footnotes that you can reference and to kind of like feel your way through. Oh, what is it? What is it? Now, what is it? I've been invested in this.
The Valkyries Loom, the Archaeology of Cloth Production and Female Power in North Atlantic. Found the goddamn thing!
I do have that as well. Yeah, it's good. I'm pretty sure I referenced that in the book as well because I wanted to get more into the dingya, the weaving hut as a liminal space. Yeah, and that was a really, really good book for that as well. And I believe that Shoya Smith, I'm butchering her name there, just recently released another book about Viking women. I would go and get it, but it is just like that side of the room that I'm currently reading.
And we're going to put you on my wish list.
It's so what we're finding is that we have had this massive kind of like bolstering interest in exactly this sphere in recent years from academics like Judy Quinn, Leszek Gardea, Elder Hyder back in the day. Leszek always, I've interacted with him, and let's just say he's an absolute treasure. He really is. I actually for the soft plug, the journal that AUK published, I wrote the review for the Norse Sorceress in there, and he got wind of it and said, "Look, can you send me the review?" And me really kind of like, I was like, "Oh no, is he gonna like it?" And he said, "Oh, great, thank you. That was a really good review." And I was like, "Yes!" Yeah, he's good. He's very eager to engage with this as well. And
Oh,
obviously
good.
he's on board.
Yes.
Yeah, he's very aware of heathenry, and he's not bigoted in that respect at all. So, good egg. But yeah, so yeah, loads of interest, loads of people writing about it in the academic sphere. Fantastic. It needs to happen. It's overdue. And I think we're only going to see that curve momentum build, you know. Yeah, it's really good stuff. Like the Norse Sorceress is really good. Like if you,
It can be so hard to get through, but oh my God, it's so chock full of good shit.
it is, yeah. And it's like if you have like Neil Price's The Viking Way and the Norse Sorceress, you just be like, these are the books you need to go with, and to go from there. Real nice kind of like two-parter almost. They quite complement each
Hmm.
other really well. Um,
Yeah, if there's the Price's The Viking Way is one of my most referenced pieces on my shelf, and honestly, it's a treasure trove. And I'm so happy the North Sorceress came out because some of the stuff that it updated from that is so worth digging back into.
mhm,
And um, it's one of the things where I love that academia is grappling with itself really hard because this stuff isn't easy, especially when you've got entrenched tradition. And it's one of the things that they talk about in both books is like it's one of the things I really appreciated when I first read The Viking Way because there was a lot of this entrenched tradition of academic tradition that I didn't know about as to why they're interpreting the way they're interpreting.
mhm,
And if you don't have that background, it's kind of like what you were talking about with the Scandinavian perspective of death. If you don't grok why they have this perspective, none of this other shit makes any sense.
mhm. Yeah, the cultural memory is powerful. Um, yeah, what book was I reading? Oh, it's here. Everything's
Damn.
gonna fall off this. I've got it. It's The Gender of Death,
Ooh.
by Karl S. Guthke. Um, really good book. It is again. It's a little bit of the history is there, but the Scandinavian stuff is a little bit. I would like it to be obviously more on that as well, but I mean, it is pointed out in there that this is, despite the fact like Moors being a feminine noun in the Latin, despite the fact that like Latin countries, with the exception of South America, presented death as masculine. It's like, how can we reconcile this if the word they use to describe it is feminine? And it's the idea of cultural memory over language. Language changes, cultural memory like perseveres. So fascinating stuff, and it's not really researched that much. Again, like Scandinavia is fantastic. The talk that I did at Jorvik was all about Scandinavian death deities. So going through the obvious, hilariously, when I was writing down that talk to present it, I was like, I need to mention Freya somewhere. And then on the day, I was like, I totally forgot to mention Freya. So I basically just went, oh, she's an interesting kind of duality of the traditional sort of Vita life, which is more feminine in the kind of like traditional Germanic and Latin countries. Early Christianity really is really to blame for this. And death being Moors a man. And it's that sort of Freya represents the kind of two halves in a nice kind of presentation, as it were. But yeah, there's so many. There's a book that I got recently. This is going to be just book recommendations. Um, something like Making the Profane Sacred. It's essays in memory of Stefan Brink. And there's a really good essay in that about goddesses and dark waters. And obviously that's the association with death and water and all of that. That I was just digging into recently. Very interesting stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of unearthed, soon to be, I don't know, people pondering about the kind of cultural memory that might have influenced a lot of the what we know to be kind of Viking Age heathen um, presentation of feminine death. So super interesting. And obviously the Valkyries are one part of that.
So was that then the catalyst for your paper on Skuld?
Yeah. The that paper what was a rein it's a revised. It was originally a chapter in my Valkyrie book, but I kind of wanted to expand on it for the paper because I wanted to. It was so fascinating to see Skuld's name being like debt, and but equally the Nornia being equated to like the Hellenic fates, which is really common throughout academia to today. It's still like you often see it in brackets, like the Nornia, the fates, you know. I've realized that it's not a perfect fit, far from it. I think that influences heathens and how they practice in this idea of deterministic fate, like fully deterministic. But yeah, Skuld, I see her as very UPG, as a death deity. I equate her with the. I was kind of playing around with the idea of like fate is allotted at a life's beginning, so it's you're given free will to basically live your life however you wish, predetermined in various ways by Orlog, and that the only thing that's promised is your death is at the end. That is the necessity, and we keep seeing this word necessity crop up. You know, all things must die, and then you can kind of use that framework as to analyze the literature. It's one framework among many, but I find it quite an interesting way of analyzing things in terms of the way that death appears in the literature. Obviously, Ragnarok, Odin's death, all of this, Baldur's death, and the way that you know, hell maybe being perceived as this sort of paradoxical entity of like living and death, kind of in one, something almost as a, I don't like using the word, but monstrous, you know, something that to the gods would be seen as like, oh, this is like the end, you know, like a paradoxical entity that just encapsulates something horrific for them. So she had to be cast away because, you know, this was something they couldn't bear to witness. I kind of like getting poetic sometimes with my work. But yeah, there's so much to dig into here in terms of things are often overlooked, misconceptions. One I would say about the Valkyries was kind of tying into an earlier question was the idea of the Northern Lights being associated with the Valkyries. Really prominent. I actually said that Visit Norway says this is an absolute fact on their website. But turns out it's from Thomas Bullfinch of Bullfinch's mythology. I couldn't find an earlier thing, and every site used the exact wording that he used. So I was like, but so there was a bit near the end where I wanted to say like, look, if you're a heathen and this is your practice, you know, you see the Northern Lights as like a representation of like light shining off of the Valkyrie's armor or whatnot, that is totally valid. I'm just trying to point out where things originated and going from there. Because I know like a lot of people see keys as quite sacred in if they're like particularly kind of devoted to Frigg. So I didn't really want to kind of like it's just upturn their entire world, and there's a part of me that's still very much wanting to affirm people's practices, but also being able to pinpoint where things might be wrong I think is quite useful. But yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions around that around today that stem from Victorian era, as usual, messing things up.
I mean, I think you kind of touch on a really interesting topic there, which I sometimes see crop up, is how much does or should new research, new findings, new publications impact people's practices?
Yeah, it's difficult.
I mean, do you think it should? Do you think people should kind of consider it and then kind of keep doing what they're doing anyways? Like where contradictions arise or where arguments arise? Obviously, if it agrees with what you're doing, then
Yeah,
it's kind of a non-factor. But yeah.
I would say that if in your practice it has some sort of value or worth or it feels right to you, absolutely fine. In fact, I would implore everyone to pursue that because um things what we have is a tapestry that is so full of holes, so full of like revisions. It wasn't really a tapestry to begin with. You know, there's some people that have drawn on it, and you know all of that. That everything is a little bit up in the air. We're still trying to see through our modern eyes what the past was like through fragments. So I mean, it even comes to a point where you can almost like go full circle and say, well, we don't know for sure that they didn't think this. We can't mind read, the bodies in the ground. So I'm very much, even though I am reconstructionist in my own perspective, of course there's elements that I are more, it's more of feeling and like personal, oh, this feels right to me, than anything we can record, like save as fact in the historical record or archaeology. There's no one on the planet who is calls themselves a reconstructionist heathen is doing it to the letter, as it were, that the Viking Age people did it. And don't believe them if they say that. Everyone has an aspect of UPG in their practice.
It's a literal impossibility if you're living in the modern age.
Yeah.
I mean, so I kind of want to have your take on this, because this is something that crops up, especially when it comes to like Valkyries or semi-divine divine figures, where one of the things that I heard quite a lot coming into heathenry when I was much younger was, don't expect that you can have a relationship with Valkyries. This is only for heroes.
If you're basing it on the post-conversion conversion literature, absolutely, sure. But no, I mean, like, Battlefield was full of everyone, of all classes. We're only seeing it from the upper class, like the heroes, the kings, people that was considered important enough to write a story, people that would have been paid, like, been able to pay skalds to record, stories about them. The vast majority of people, especially like those that are considered peasants and thralls, they were involved in war as well. And I refuse to believe that the Valkyries were like, I'm not dealing with these people. I'm only dealing with like kings and princes. That's just not. If they're choosing who lives and who dies on the battlefield, if we're going to take that perspective, that's got to include, it's not one or two people. It is deciding the fate of the battlefield en masse. They're going to be dealing with everyone. And yeah, so I refuse. I think it's a bit of a ridiculous statement to think that, they're only dealing with kind of like blue bloods. It's just nonsense. And of course, we're seeing Valhalla as this kind of like Hall of Kings, but then that's not the original incarnation of it either. That's a later interpretation. So, it's you've always got to go back and think why it's analyzing everything we have with a critical eye, and being able to think about provenance and all the biases that happen, scribal errors, people writing post conversion, everything else, people just recording like regional tales that they're familiar with. So yeah, it's very much a subject I'm passionate about. I take issue with people seeing the Valkyries as with that like perspective in mind, but also the perspective of you can't possibly have any sort of kind of like veneration or worship of them because they're this like monstrous spectral force, that's just kind of like gliding around the battlefield. It's like, well, no, because we have it's just that kind of goes hand in hand with people saying that we don't have any evidence of the Valkyries being worshipped. It's like we don't have evidence of a lot of beings being worshipped. We don't have a lot of evidence of, if it's not Thor, Freyja or Odin, it's basically,
what evidence is there at that point, right?
yeah, we have occasional like place names, but I mean, in terms of the literature, we don't really have much apart from those three. Especially if you're looking like Adam of Bremen, who's just writing about those three and various other chroniclers. So yeah, if you want to get that kind of like granular about it, you can be like, well, okay, so you can only worship these three, and you
Right.
can and it's just that's not modern heathen practice. It's just awful. It's also be so boring if we were just worshiping the same three gods over and over and over and over again. Variety.
I've I've got a lot of feelings on it because I do carry a very long-term relationship with a Valkyrie. I don't talk about it very much because up until your book, when I would talk about it in heathen circles, it would either get laughed down or I would get that kind of response of, well, you're obviously bullshitting this because only heroes get to have these relationships. And it occurs to me that it's just a reiteration of gods of limited access,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's almost worse than that because it's like there are entire classes of beings that you're not developing relationships with because you can't cite them? What is what does your religion look like if you like do you like land spirits, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly so important, but if they're not very well cited because that's kings would maybe deal with them occasionally. Jarls might occasionally deal with them, but they didn't get written down very much, but clearly was part of folk practice when, we're coming up to what I think Snow you mentioned a lot of your extraction from 14th, 15th, 16th century writing and becoming much more useful in that regard, right?
I mean, there's just the invention of the printing press was a wonderful thing.
Go printing press.
You know, more people can write, and then more people can read, and then more people have access to these things, and more people can create copies of these things. And I mean, then you get into the whole conversation around grimoires where you end up with a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a, and no one even remembers what the original even said anymore because everyone has amended and added their own footnotes and added their own marginal notes and everything in the entire chain along. Um, and that's before you even get into the conversation of how in different points in time and in different regions things are very variable anyways, because what they're going to do in one village in modern day Sweden is going to be entirely different to what they're doing at the bottom of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind what they're doing at one end of Sweden as compared to ancient polytheistic practices in what is now Sicily.
You
Very
mean that
true.
there's local variations? This isn't right. I thought this was supposed to be stratified and always forever solidified in amber for all time.
I mean, in realistic terms, purely geographically, how far is New York from New Jersey?
Right.
And yet, how different is New York culture to New Jersey culture?
Call them the same thing and watch a fist fight happen.
Right?
I mean, I'm the UK gets this all the time. Like, oh, we went to the UK. Great. Which part? We went to the UK. Like, you're all the same, right?
I mean, in the same way that there are people in the US who've never ever left their state, there are people in these isles who've never left their village or their town or their city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in a very, very different geographical scale, but it's the same principle.
Yeah.
And so, if that's happening in the age where we have the internet and we have planes and we have the motor engine, surely it makes sense it would have also been happening in the ancient world where you need a boat or a wagon or a horse to get around and take your ideas with you. So, again, the printing press suddenly means you can invent post people.
It's I can't remember what prompted me to think about this in terms of like a theory, but the idea was for me that maybe Loki developed this mischief maker thing because of the regional differences in terms of when they were telling the stories, Loki could do anything. It's just like could, they might to mix it up, they'd be like, and this time around Loki saves the day, and this time around that kind of like he was the element of kind of surprise and I can't remember what made me think of that, but there's just this conversation now. It's that sort of these stories weren't rock solid. They were very much like fluid. And of course, we kind of see them now as a solid sort of like canon, as it were. But there's a quote by Neil Price who says, the Norse myths don't exist. The Viking Age people wouldn't recognize these myths as theirs. And I think that is so important to keep in mind because, again, what we have is one version that we don't have eyes on any like the multitudes of versions that existed. So again, it goes back to that idea of cite it. You need a citation, you need an attestation, an explicit attestation to justify worshipping beings in a certain way. Yeah, so it is a sort of intangible sort of pursuit we're going at, but I think it's validating and affirming for heathenry as a whole to have that in mind.
I mean, I think that people looking for one solid, unique, kind of original are incredibly dismissive of the whole notion of oral culture, and B, very much approaching these things from a very Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Basically, because oral tradition, like things just change anyways. And I mean, things change with written tradition anyways. It's just easier to track that change.
Mm.
But I think a lot of people, when they get into heathenry from the off, can be very, very dismissive of oral tradition or culture, and sort of romanticize this notion of things being written.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think you see a lot of that implicitly in a lot of the people being sad that we don't have more records and more extant things. But it's kind of, if those things were written down, that entire culture would be drastically different from what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, if only we could see the amendments of the oral word stories being told.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the printing press, I was thinking of being able to see like people making changes. I was thinking, how cool would it be if you could make changes in library books? Just be like, I disagree with this, so I'm gonna write my own thing. I thought that'd be really cool. I'd be.
I mean, you can
You
call that a
can.
damaged copy, but you know.
It's highly frowned upon. If you hand in this thing that's just covered in like your scribbles, like, and the next person opens it up, they've got like marginalia and like just everything everywhere. Ugh. It'd be more interesting.
But if that's like an A-level textbook, people love that. They're like, oh, someone made notes for me.
Oh yeah, summaries. Otherwise, it's just dick pics, you know.
Well, yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, someone else drew a penis on Hitler in my World War II revision book.
I wish we had more collaborative sort of writing in the modern day. That'd be so good.
Honestly, it's part of why I'm happy that things like the Norse Sorceress exist. It's also why I'm happy more pagans are going toward anthologies, because trying to cram this shit out on your own is hard. I mean, you've done this twice, 3 times now.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I see it more as a devotional act, though. A lot of my practice is research. It's just, it's what I have time for. And occasionally I get together with big groups and do rituals that way. But yeah, the kind of the aspect of going into like libraries and finding books and sitting down and like absorbing information, I feel is a very like oath-in practice. And so yeah, it's when I was writing
100%.
the Valkyrie book, I was thinking like surely Odin's going yes, go grab that knowledge, but yeah, I think it's absolutely, I love writing as well, so it's definitely something that brings me joy in this world.
So oh, sorry, Emily, go on.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say I really appreciate that you put together the Valkyrie book because I remember encountering the Valkyries within my practice like 7 years ago and trying to ask around how people worked with them. And occasionally I would find someone, but it was a very like personal to them practice, and it wasn't necessarily something that they wanted to share. So having a book like this, I think makes it so much more accessible. And I do agree with the idea of like a lot of anthologies in the future because it's so cool to see everybody's ideas together. I think right now with blogs and videos where people react to each other back and forth, it's kind of the same idea, but it would be nice to have some that's like all together.
Hmm. Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
no.
And thank you. Yeah, I think it's common for people that worship the Valkyries for it to be deeply personal. I've probably met like 6 or 7 other people, and for them it was something that was very intense in terms of their experiences. So yeah, I mean, I'm far, 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 far from the only one that's had experiences, but people tend to just be a little bit more private. Which is absolutely fine. But I think we need to kind of normalize Valkyrie worship a little bit more because again, in kind of group settings, they are seen as like mead bearers, but in not with the historical importance of that. I always described it as people seeing them almost as like bar wenches, you know. It's just and that sort of like you can see like the overtones of kind of like misogyny in like manifesting in that. Like this is their role, they're serving mead to us, you know, during symbol or whatever. Um and you know that's far from their main role. In fact, the point I make in the book is that the mead bearing aspects to them, while historically absolutely important, really came about and originated from Eriksmal, which is kind of satirical in terms of its tone. And we know that Snorri was very much aware of Eriksmal because he quotes it directly in his Edda. So it's definitely a piece that was known for like at least kind of like certain members of the Skaldic tradition at the time. But again, it originated in a piece that can be seen as quite funny, almost comedic, because you know Odin's this kind of like bumbling character who's caught unawares by a new arrival. You know, it's when you have that, when you analyze it with that mindset, you have this kind of like real funny image potentially of these kind of Valkyries who were seen in the earliest tradition as being quite bloodthirsty, kind of demonic demons of carnage sort of thing. And then framing them as mead bearers. It's just, there's obviously, I imagine one very valid interpretation would be that that would have gotten a laugh out of people when they were retelling it. But obviously that is what we have today, and obviously stripped of that cultural kind of context and the tacit knowledge. It kind of built from there. And my perspective is that that's not necessarily invalid either, because we can't just dismiss everything that came afterwards as being like, well, it was based on this comedic sort of lay. But yeah, it's it's
I
that
don't think there's
balance.
actually like a fight that needs to be between the comedic and the sacred.
Mm,
That
exactly. Yeah.
to me, there's a great deal of sacrality that can be found if you're taking it in a reverent attitude. There's a great deal of use to be found. If you think of well, people will be like they'll point to flighting a lot and like the flighting that Othin as I'm gonna butcher this name, Harbarath, I think it is.
Hmm.
When he's across the river from Thor and Thor doesn't know it's hilarious. And it's one context in which flighting is like basically a dad razzing his kid and the kid doesn't know it. It's great fun when you look at it from that perspective. And then you get to Loki's flighting of everybody during the Lokasena, and if you take it from a comedic angle, it's not that you don't need to take it seriously because nobody in the saga of this point disputes what he's saying.
Yeah.
He's basically airing everybody's dirty laundry. And it's goddamn funny when you like pull back and think about it.
It's a ye oldie Kendrick's track about Drake.
Just a diss track. Yeah.
It is though. It is. I honestly think that's a great way of thinking about it. But there's so much that when you think of it from the humorist perspective, there's gold here, and not just because we can take the proverbial stick out of our asses as heathens as a stereotype, but also if you think of it from a very humorous angle, I mean, you're talking about something that is a bloodthirsty monster covered in gore in the
Yeah.
in the common imagination, walking up to you like, "Want a drink?"
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. And honestly, I think I love that point of like the bits that we have are often funny. So like let's the gods have a humorous side potentially. This was understood, you know. So don't we do flighting as in like my group, and it is just kind of like a bonding experience. It's and it is, we do it obviously in honor of the gods. This is something that they did, and yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of people take heathenry too seriously, and you know, obviously there are serious moments, like obviously heartfelt, emotional, like intense experiences. But I think a lot of people, as you said, push the sort of like the funny things aside. It's so important to consider and bring that into your practice as well. This was obviously the oral tradition was an entertainment tradition. It was to like, as well as informing people, it was to like hold a bead hole enraptured, and and everything that entailed. And I think that if you keep that in mind, it's for the betterment of your practice and the heathenry. And absolutely in agreement with you there.
It's theater. For fuck's sake, it's theater. Like a lot of
Yeah.
this, we were supposed to perform. One of the theories I saw with the Locusena is that each god is supposed to be somebody else performing. Like, okay,
Yes.
so think of it like a script, and then it becomes much more dynamic. Because if you're just sitting there and you're reading it off a page, I mean, unless you've got that kind of mindset, it might not be all that theatrical in your head because you're trying to grok what they're saying, context, etc. But when you're thinking of it like a performance, which is why I love some of these living history museums, because now they're doing that.
Mm.
They're bringing the theatrical element that was a necessary component of oral history, right?
Oh, it's so good you say that because that's just made me remember a good friend of mine, Matt Jones, at Hellsmoot last year. He did a Locusena retelling with audience participation. He brought people up on stage and gave them the parts, and it was hilarious. It was like, excuse me, and like different people like stepping into the ring to kind of like tackle Loki and like it was so good. And he's also an excellent poet. I mean, shout out to him. He's fantastic. He's a true Skuld. You feel it. Um, yeah, is I love it, and I like the idea of the sitting down and reading the editors is obviously important. We recommend that for new heathens, but I think honestly, kind of like discussing it between people or sharing it or doing performances if you're able to really brings a new layer of understanding. Because yeah, it brings it to life a little bit more instead of just being like these kind of like almost just obviously just words on a page, ink on a page. This was not the original form that these would have been told in. So bringing a little bit of that to life is great.
Well, it's kind of like the phenomena around Shakespeare being like this this deep esoteric subject, and it's like, y'all, like read Shakespeare, see it performed, see it performed by people who know how to perform it. Because holy shit, it's really goddamn funny, and it's nowhere near as serious as we like try to make it out to be.
Hmm.
I think it's a lot of the same phenomena of almost getting too high on our own supply of just how serious this needs to be.
It's like academic, scholarly thought, all of that. Yeah, I get it. The text can also seem pretty, I guess, advanced, technical, difficult to approach for a lot of people. That's obviously where different translations come in handy. But yeah, it brings on a whole new kind of awesomeness, as it were. And I think on okay, no, I really want to address this. People should start like Edda reading. It's like Edda theater. I would totally. We actually do have some. There was the Vluspa recently that was kind of artistically depicted in. I think it was in Norway. I could be completely wrong about that. But so we are seeing people starting to adopt that sort of approach, and I think we need more of that, honestly, everywhere. So now I want to see it. I want to see whether I can find this. The Vluspa
I
reading
mean,
theater.
a lot of this just goes back to the fact it was an old oral tradition. I mean, you were talking about Shakespeare. He wrote plays. He wasn't writing novels. If we're
Mm,
talking about the Norse myths, then it was an oral tradition. So whether that's one person telling everybody or a group of people going back and forth, that's oral storytelling.
mm. Collaborative.
Mm.
Right. There's that. So there's a play that I'm thinking of. Uh, it's with Dionysus in it, and I cannot remember for the life of me
The
which one.
frogs.
I think maybe there's a great deal of audience participation even in some of the oldest plays we've got. I think maybe I don't know if it's Euripides I'm thinking of, one of his plays. I don't know. But there's these aspects where Dionysus actually like turns to the audience and says something to them, and they're supposed to like there's spots in the play where they're supposed to be responding.
Hmm. And obviously, Greek play is highly comedic at times. The comedies. It's very similar in terms of the way they approached their kind of depiction of the gods and their heroes, the stories, all of that, it, across kind of like this pan-continental, pan-global sort of elements that we could nerd out about all day. It's so interesting.
So you mentioned that you view your writing as a devotional act.
Hmm.
So in that sense, is there a ritualistic element to it, or do you just kind of roll out of bed, start writing, and consider that the devotion itself? Like, is
Bit of,
the yeah.
bit of both.
Hmm.
Honestly, it depends if I have the spoons on the day. If I know I have to do writing and it feels like a roll out of bed start writing day, brilliant. But I tend to try and be in the right mindset of okay, it's the intent of being like, okay, I'm going to dedicate time now to reading about this topic and writing and using what skills that I have and my interests and all of the like the historical interests that I have, all of everything that's led me to the here and now, um, in terms of writing, producing content, getting a deeper understanding of everything. That's definitely my kind of pursuit. But yeah, sometimes it is just a roll out of bed day. I want to do some writing and I have to for some reason. But yeah.
So it's not like every time you go to write, you kind of sit and there are offerings and candles and incense and meditation, and then you sit and write.
It's about 50-50.
Mm.
Maybe 60-40, depending.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, when I have the spoon is probably the right word.
Hmm.
Um, but it's definitely something I want to do more of moving forwards. Now that I have a little bit more freedom in terms of when I want to publish the next work and all of that, I have more time to dedicate to it because I moved to be self-employed late last year. So yeah, there's opportunities now for me to really build on that. And to the next book I'm working on is, as mentioned, about the other in Norse myth. So I'm going to be doing a lot of worshipping of like Skadi, the Jotnar, all of everyone to do with like that sphere of things, Ongabotha, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, they've become very present in recent months. Um, and at Jorvik, there was a people who'd never considered kind of worshipping Skadi. She kept popping up for one reason or another, just in people's minds, to the point where the kind of the closing bloat was a lot of hails to Skadi because for some reason she felt very present. But yeah, there's and that book is definitely going to try and do a similar spin to the Valkyrie book in terms of like reevaluating common misunderstandings, but also in adding new layers of understanding potential theories like Skadi, and I've been doing a lot of research on the Wergild ring lists and the older Gulathing laws and
Mm.
reframing. Yeah, and I can see you nodding, and kind of reframing all of that as a legal pursuit as well. She was doing her duty as in the understanding of the laws of the time of her role as the unmarried daughter. Um, and also there's a little bit almost of trickery with the offer that she was given in that it was only unmarried daughters that could pursue blood payment. So as soon as she's married, she
Right.
gets all stakes are off, so it feels a little underhanded in a sort of way.
Odin.
Yeah, yeah. And it's but also when you have that with obviously Locusena, with Skadi almost having that justification of blood payment when she like when Loki's son is killed and she places the serpent over his head, especially in relation to Loki saying about his own role in Thiazi's death and the timing
Mm.
of that. And you could see it as Loki becoming an outlaw and unprotected by the laws of the gods, and so that's why he was bound and punished and all of that. So there's different ways of obviously different layers of ways we can look at the Eddas even today that are brand new, and multitude of others go wild, theorize everything. I'm definitely all about that. And yeah, just I could talk about like so many of those kind of different perspectives, like the idea of oh, who was it? Was it Judy Quinn? No, it was Margaret Clooney's Ross, suggesting like analyzing the material of the difference between the Aesir, the Vanir, and the Jotnar as like a class system, and the idea of like the Aesir wouldn't marry the lower class Jotnar, because of that class discrepancy, and like showing like overlaying the material with that kind of like infrastructure in mind. Really interesting. And yeah, and of course something I briefly mentioned in the Valkyrie book, the idea of the Jotnar and troll women potentially being the Salmi,
Yep.
um, and that all of that.
Especially when you're talking about the thing that, because they've become such a big part of my life, that's something that pops up with the trolls very, very frequently. Um, so when I saw like the other in the script we had for this episode, I was like, oh, good, good, because like this has really been part of my jam for these last couple of years. Because like the trolls occupy a very similar space to the Jotnar, and I do
Hmm.
not class them the same.
No, they're not.
And they're very similar in regards to the Valkyrie because they're either cast in this very almost untouchable light, like Freyr looks off in the distance on Hlithgelf, and there's this shining goddess in the distance, or these people are going to eat my fucking feet.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, you get these really disparate other categories where there are either this untouchable, like, mystic being that you can barely walk to, and this is the god we're talking about. And then we've got, you know, the most ugly ass creature you could possibly imagine, and she wants to bang you like nobody's business. And it's almost like the very few references you can find to trolls in the literature are almost that dichotomous. It's fucking hilarious.
yeah. And yeah, I've got another book recommendation. Ármann Jakobsson. His work on trolls is fantastic. I would 100% recommend him, especially The Troll Inside You, I think is what it's called. Um, in that he breaks down again, it's later like academic thought of the troll into separate categories, whereas that wasn't the understanding in the day of troll was all of the categories. It was a word to encompass the epitome of the other, but also there was nuance within that. And obviously Snorri did a heck of a lot of damage as well by basically ignoring the differences between the Jotnar and trolls. He calls all of like the giantesses troll women, and it completely ignores the differences as well between like the Risar, as being the kind of the good kind of Jotnar potentially, and also the ones more applicable to the idea of them being giant. They tend to be more large in stature. There was a nuance. I think Tom Grant wrote about a paper about giant proportions, the problem with giant proportions, or something along those lines. And he says, like, look, there is differences in these terms, and we have just homogenized them. Equally unhomogenized them for the trolls. It's kind of like this weird kind of balance of they. I think the wording that Jakobsson says is that something along the lines of this idea of wanting to like demarcate and categorize is modern. Obviously, they didn't have that sort of obsession with putting things under different labels and boxes, and troll was just everything that wasn't human. It was just everything they didn't recognize, and it is fascinating because of the way it embodies also this movement towards Christianity, because we also see a very clear delineation of the wilds being seen as pagan and ancient and old, and Christianity was all about population centers, towns, cities, and so we had this schism forming between the wild being old, ancient, pagan, and cities and being civilization and all of that, and the troll became more of that embodiment of the wild, the lingering monster, all of that. So fascinating an area, again, that is hardly really talked about.
So a few times now you've sort of talked about this notion of the other.
Mhm.
So could you explain maybe or talk about what that term exactly means?
Oh, okay. The other
Mm.
is, it can be the mysterious side of like of the world. It is the monstrous. It is those that are pushed aside by society. It is magical beings. It is the practice of magic. It is the practice of being an outlaw. Was seen as othered. It was everything that wasn't accepted by societal norms, expectations. All of that. It was something which came with so many negative connotations. It was kind of in Scandinavia, it was seen as the Seid workers were othered. We have the Jotnar as being in terms of the mythological space, othered as well. They were not these accepted parties. It was all about kind of reinforcing strict social convention, gender norms. But even then, there's flexibility when it comes with all of that, because even like Odin in Ármann Jakobsson calls him the troll of trolls, and Atli as well has Atli as well, the figure of Atli also is called troll-like, but he is given permission, accepted. His behaviors are accepted because of his social status. So there is even within this idea of like societal norms and expectation, those of a higher class, like Odin, like the king, kind of the kingly figure that he is, were given permission to practice these behaviors because of their social status. So again, even that idea is challenged when you have those differences and all of that. But yeah, the other is amazingly fascinating. Is way summarizing thought there.
I think if people think of witches as cryptids, it kind of gets to where some of this is.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the things that I kept reading in the sources was like, you're not just other in terms of like you're a social outcast. You're sometimes looked at as not human.
Yeah.
Like capital O other is like, depending on your sourcing, it's very interesting how you go from like, yeah, they're a flesh and blood person, but there's something really fucky about them, and I'm not sure I like it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now I can't remember the name of the person that was he was just called, like, there was something troll-like about him, and he was considered like monstrous.
Oh, god damn it. I know what you're talking
I
about
know.
too.
I was like, can I just go and grab the book? I don't know, let me think. There's a lot of like I have to detach myself from cables for a second.
Go for it.
I find him. I find him.
Bum 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 bum.
Okay.
Intermission. Bum 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 bum
You going?
bum 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 bum. Yeah. Intermission. Dun 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 dun.
This is gonna really annoy me if I can't find it. It's after that. Keep going. Don't help me. Nope. 1 second. I will find it. Come on.
Ooh, you know what? It just occurred to me. I should go look in my troll workshop because I might have that guy in there.
Oh, yes, please.
Are you talking about Chief Agnar and Ragnar?
Yes.
Yeah!
Yes.
Fuck
Yes.
yeah!
Yes.
Okay, that's in Halfdanr Saga.
Yes.
Gripestone there.
For those of you thinking that seemed like an extraordinary amount of excitement for something that they just remembered straight away, that's because Jason edited out the 3 hours of them researching this and intermission.
Don't lie, it was 4.
The
Yeah.
quote that I have in my workshop is from chapter 4 of The God of the Hanged,
Mm-hmm.
Oath and Grimnir. This is Chief Agnar and his father Ragnar are said to become trolls using trollskap, which is troll or taboo magic to protect the grave mound.
Yeah, that's it. That is it. So yeah, I can't remember what the point was now.
Well, you were talking about how the trollish or the
Othered by
other
society.
becomes this thing where you're not just identified, you are that thing.
Mm-hmm. You are not human. We see that also with like berserkers. In that they're at one point they're kind of like this idealized, fine to have in a society, but as we move through conversion, they're definitely seen as outlawed and others because they're seen as more either liminal or more animalistic rather than human, so they fall into that category. But yeah, there's the way that that manifests in the literature is incredibly amazingly, as I said, fascinating. It's just we could talk for 3 hours on that, 4 hours, you know.
I'm
It's
good with this.
yeah. I mean, yeah, the okay, where do we start then? Okay. Hour one. Okay.
So another project that I saw mentioned on your website upcoming is Sigrun, a novella.
Yes. It is. I've given myself a word count of 35,000 words. I basically said, like, well, Sigrun just kind of pops up out of nowhere. Obviously, we know that her backstory is actually reincarnated from Svova, but other than that, she pops up and meets Helgi, and then off they go. So I was kind of just having the sort of experimental kind of approach to, again, quite a kind of a dedication in terms of I'm very much worshipping Sigrun as I'm writing it, and just thinking like, what was she up to? You know, between that time period, just kind of like a little speculative, in all of that. But I think what my main goal with that is to encourage heathens to write creatively if they have the want or the need to about the gods that they worship, and I'm finding it very interesting to kind of put into with a creative mindset how I worship the Valkyries and how I perceive them through writing. It's very different from obviously the Valkyrie book, which is strictly more non-fiction in terms of the approach, in terms of analyzing the material, and so writing it from a more of a creative way is refreshing and also very strange. And but yeah, I'm hoping to get that out this year at some point. Probably self-published. But yeah,
So are you viewing this then as fiction, or are you viewing this as sort of creating a myth yourself?
that's the question, isn't it? Because where is the line though? I don't know.
That was my follow-up question.
Where is the line? I'm, I guess it's because I'm aware that this is purely from my own mind. You know, we have no information in terms of that what happened after Svova died and before Sigrun meets Helgi. We have no information whatsoever, other than the fact that she was apparently a Valkyrie in whatever roles. I don't know how long for. We just know that she is seen above the skies when Helgi's on his ship with Valkyries. And she lands and it's all badass and awesome. But yeah, it's definitely that's a really interesting question, and I don't know whether I know. I guess for me it's mostly fictional because I'm aware that this is, but then how you going into the whole idea of how were myths, you know, created and at what point were they just, you know, potentially fiction? I don't know. Is it just to do with intent or is it I don't know.
As I was going to say, is this coming from your mind, or is this being put into your mind? If this
Don't,
is a
here we go.
if this is a devotional act for Sigrun.
I don't know. Let's say that maybe some of it is kind of being nudged in the right in a certain direction because I'm also using it as a kind of fleshing out some of the ideas around my frustration with the myth mostly being about the elite, the social elite. So I've got a chapter in there from someone who is a thrall under Sigrun's father, and kind of using that as a sort of a way of juxtaposing these two perspectives of one with power, one without power, and you know the kind of the everything, the various themes that are explored within the literature. And so yeah, maybe a little bit of both. But I mean, far and away, don't use this as a VPG moving forward, please. It's just
Too late.
no. But yeah, it's interesting. It was initially planned as a sort of like a change of flavor to kind of because I was moving from the Valkyrie book to the Wild Unleashed. I didn't really want to because the Wild Unleashed is also being written with Dan Coulter, who's currently doing his PhD. I don't know how he's doing that. Absolute beast, going through that on a very fascinating topic. I don't know whether I can talk about it, but I'll hint, about neurodiversity in medieval literature, very specific period. So that's fascinating. Honestly, some of the stuff that he's come like is the like comparisons are just like amazing stuff. But yeah, so I'm working on it with him, and it's looking to be 100,000 words plus. So I felt like I needed some sort of palate cleanser between projects, because that's a lot. It's a
I
lot.
love that your palate cleanser is a 35,000 word novella. I can't say that I'm cut from much different cloth, because I can see my co-host looking at me like, you motherfucker.
It's just, yeah, it's something very nice. It and the approach, and just kind of like putting how I see like hell, the realm, and because there is a bit in there that Sigrun interacts with Brynhilde, and in hell, which I thought was, and I kind of want to borrow a little bit of Saxo's in there. Like, I'm not doing this from like it's a visual place and it's sleet spattered and all of that Snorri leans into. This is very much the way that I see it, almost like an Alice in Wonderland sort of perspective, of just like a flipped kind of like parallel world, as it were, with Hadding. But yeah, it's interesting because it is informed through my UPG and inspirations from the literature. So it's, yeah, I think it might be of interest, and I would implore any other heathen to do the same, to write about their own experiences through creative means, or again, nonfiction, in terms of their kind of like more academic. It seems strange to call it nonfiction though, because it feels like that's too clinical a term. It's like we need a third category. We need like, this is devotional heathen writing. It's not exactly
It's the issue of walking into Waterstones and going, we have fiction and non-fiction and religious texts.
yeah.
What about living stories?
It's, yeah, it's honestly, it's just it's,
Because, like, to me, like, this is where a lot of the metal meets the meat. Because I
yeah.
mean, one of the things that I've done over the years in a lot of different contexts is talk about the creation story from the Norse myth and like the Voluspa and the Gylfaginning. And every time I tell it, there is something different that comes forward, whether it's from my perspective as the storyteller or the gods or spirits pushing something. Um, to me, what really we're talking about is living, breathing
Hmm.
storytelling, where it's taken out of this, like, does it comport with consensus reality versus is this true? Like, truly myth making is what you're
Mm.
talking about. And I think that's a powerful liminal space to be in when you think of, well, because I mean, like, people will be like, oh, it's fiction, it's a novella. It's, no, you're myth making. You just
Mm.
happen to find it really fun to fucking do, which is great.
I love that. That's a really cool perspective. Oh my brain is just blowing. Like it's just like, poof.
So when Dan Coltus is on his break from writing about neurodiversity in a particular region, a particular area of medieval
Yes.
history, because I mean, looking at 14th century Byzantine records is going to be pretty draining. So I can see this being a good break from that.
Yeah, I mean he's having to learn High Middle German.
Mm.
Fuck.
Uh yeah. So he luckily was taught Latin and Old Norse in his masters. But he's
In the womb,
in the
yes.
womb. Yeah. And yeah, so now he's doing High Middle German and some, oh wait, Middle Welsh. So he's, yeah, he's, that is his brain right now. So I'm constantly amazed. He's told me to stop referring to him as my mentor. Because he says he's very, like, in terms of humble. He says, "You're my peer." I'm not. I can't speak old, middle, high German. You amaze me.
And I
Old, middle,
just,
high.
High, old, northern, middle German.
Goldilocks German.
Yeah,
All three bears of German.
yeah.
One of the beautiful things about having a mentor is when they call you a peer, it's really not on you to argue with them.
I mean, I try.
I know. I
Um,
get it. I get it. But just because you can't speak Old Middle High German, Middle Welsh, what you are providing the community is a beautiful, needed, informed, and spirit-driven perspective. And you may not see the full unfolding of how dynamic an effect that has, either until you're in the grave or at least, 5, 10, 20 years hence. Like, please do not sell yourself short.
Sif and I are from the part of Britain furthest from the sea. We know hills and valleys. We don't know piers. Piers make no sense to us.
I appreciate the humor there because that almost made me cry. Thank you. Um,
I'm
yeah.
also not wrong,
No.
What is this pier you speak of?
right? We understand hills and we understand valleys. Piers?
I mean, I live in Michigan. We have like piers and lighthouses fucking everywhere. So like when people are like, "Oh, I don't know how to how to relate to Njorther," I'm like, I live in Michigan. Like, take a look around because we have inland seas all over the fucking place. And if you really like want to find a body of water that will challenge you like an ocean, go take a dip in Lake Superior because if you're in there too long, you're going to freeze to death.
Oh, I feel like a water deity discussion is imminent. Water is so liminal and so important to the kind of the Old Norse religion. It's so everywhere.
Yeah,
Would you start looking for it, you got Pennsylvania and like this whole idea of swamps and bogs and rivers and everything else, and you just think, wow, that's a whole life's worth of reading right there.
absolutely.
I think that's it's I think that is one of my favorite things about heathenry is that you can come at it from whatever angle and you can find decades of of either like personal practice or like reading that you find fascinating. Every angle, whatever your interest is in. And
Every Saxon, too.
Well,
uh,
and that's Sif gone.
yeah, I'm just right. Okay. No.
But I mean, like, if you've got a hyper focus, we have a god and or ancestor and or spirit for you. Pick it,
Absolutely.
pick any direction, literally any direction, and just go.
Run. Like, and I
Or
think
sail.
oh, yes. I think that's kind of can be quite difficult to grasp if you're a new heathen who wants everything kind of like just read the Eddas. Those are the 100% truth. That's the Bible for you. And for me, I just want to be able to sit a new heathen down and go, what are you interested in? What drew you to this path in the first place? Go, you know, and form your own sort of practice from that, and the breadth of the material that we have, despite it being patchy and a little bit like fallible, um, has that opportunity to do that, and because this was people's lives and the complete kind of breadth of the human condition and all of that, people worshipping in their own way. It's still as valid today as it ever has been. But yeah, oh God, dear me, I've been
So,
talking a lot.
so what I hear is we need to have you back on yet again. Not only when you get this next book written, but also in the intervening because there's so much we could tackle with liminality, the other water. Just like pick a direction we could go in it, and that's one of the things I love about these exchanges around a sacred digital fire
Yeah.
is you get into this liminal space and sometimes time falls away and oh we've been here for 2 hours talking about Valkyries and the other and stuff, and it's one of the things that I love about heathenry. It's one of the things I love about animism and polytheism writ large is it's the breadth of human experience, and we're not separate from that experience of being people.
hmm It's just there was a small fraction of that of that being recorded, and 99.999% of it hasn't. So go wild. Find your hyperfixations. And then enjoy. And then talk to other people about it. We need more people talking just about everything like this, or in groups, or as much as you feel comfortable, like normalizing discussion of heathenry and practice, because that's how this grows, you know. Yeah.
I think Sif saying venture forth and discuss might be a great ending point, unless anyone else had anything that they wanted to.
If I keep talking, we'll be here for another 2 hours. So
fuck all the do till work. I appreciate it.
So if people want to find the existing currently published works by your good self, or your wonderful artwork, or find out about anything else that you do and where you be, where can they go, Sif?
Oh, right. I'm primarily on Blue Sky at the moment. It's a nice place, nicer place than everything most other places. Valsif.bsky, whatever the account layout is. I'm under Valsif, Valsif. Sif of the Slain is my angle there. Oh God, I didn't even talk about Sif. Anyway, right.
I think you did last time. Don't worry.
Okay, good. I'm on Instagram at Lady Valsif, I believe. That's where I post most of my art and just random book covers of things that I'm reading. I'm on YouTube at Valsif. And in terms of the books, Valkyria's Servant or Master is basically available most places. If you type it in, you'll find it somewhere. Whether that be like Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, whatever your local bookshop is, chances are, if they don't have it, they can probably order it in. What else? Wyrd Less Woven is on Amazon and Kindle. It's also randomly in Gelling Dragon and Waterstones if you're in the UK. And we are trying to ship it to other places because Amazon's boo. I think that's it. Is that it?
I believe so.
We'll add the link to She Who Becomes Death into the show notes as well.
Yeah, that's a free access paper, and I want to do more of that. I definitely want to do more of that. I want to write more papers moving forwards.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. All right, beautiful people. I want to thank all of our. Oh wait, we didn't plug your pluggables. Snow, plug your pluggables.
You can find me at snowthegoth.com, where I be doing things. Emily, what about you?
You can find me at streakingfate.wordpress.com. Santh?
All right, you can find me at saranth.wordpress.com. You can support me on patreon.com/SaranthOthenson. So if you want to commission me for a topic, a prayer, or if you want to get some spiritual consultation, you can find me there. You can also find me online elsewhere as Saranth on pretty much any social media network. And you can find this show on patreon.com/AroundGrandfatherFire. And you can find us on Discord. You do not have to be a member of the Patreon to be a member of the Discord. Please come in. The fire is fine. And join us around the fire. And I want to thank all of our listeners, all of our supporters, and everybody who has been with us today to sit down around the grandfather fire and listen and talk. So we will see you next time around the fire.